History. We're taught to trust it, to believe the official records, the sanitized textbooks, the polished monuments that stand tall in our cities, casting long shadows over the truth. We're told these are the facts, the unassailable truth of our collective past. But what if I told you that some of the darkest, most horrifying chapters were deliberately hidden, buried under layers of bureaucratic denial, sealed away in classified documents, and scrubbed from public memory by those who feared the consequences of the truth? Tonight, we are pulling back the veil. We are uncovering 6 dark secrets that the architects of history tried desperately to cover up. 6 true stories of human tragedy, cold-blooded conspiracy, and supernatural horror that fester in the dark corners of our world. These are events so disturbing, they haven't just been forgotten. They've left permanent, searing scars on the very fabric of reality itself. These aren't myths. These aren't legends whispered around campfires. These are documented events, confirmed by survivors, uncovered by dogged investigators, and validated by paranormal researchers. Events that, to this day, echo with a residual energy, a paranormal activity so potent it defies explanation. But be warned, what you are about to witness will change the way you see the world. Once you know these secrets, you can't unknow them. The shadows will seem deeper, the silence more menacing. And you will understand that some truths are far more terrifying than fiction. And some truths are better left buried. Number 6. The Willowbrook State School Experiments, Staten Island, New York. Our journey into the darkness begins in the 1950s, on a sprawling, deceptively green campus in Staten Island, New York. To the outside world, the Willowbrook State School sounded benevolent, a place of care and education. But behind that innocent-sounding name, behind those locked doors and barred windows, festered one of the most horrific and unethical medical experiments in American history. And for decades, the government and the medical establishment worked in concert to keep it quiet. You walk through the abandoned, graffiti-scarred corridors of Willowbrook today, and the feeling is immediate and oppressive. It's a physical weight, a suffocating sense of suffering that clings to the peeling paint and the shattered windows. The air itself is thick with a profound, psychic dread, as if the very bricks and mortar remember the atrocities committed within these walls. Willowbrook was designed to house children with intellectual disabilities. But it quickly became a dumping ground, a human warehouse. It was chronically overcrowded, horrifically understaffed, and its inhabitants were, for all intents and purposes, forgotten by society. They were the invisible children. But one man saw this not as a tragedy, but as an opportunity. Dr. Saul Krugman, a renowned virologist from New York University. From 1963 to 1966, with the full approval of the New York State Department of Mental Hygiene and funding from the U.S. government, he began a series of experiments. His goal was to study the hepatitis virus, and he had a perfect, captive test population. He deliberately infected hundreds of these vulnerable children. He mixed the virus into their chocolate milk. He injected it directly into their bloodstreams. The justification, as always, was the cold, clinical pursuit of knowledge research that could, in theory, help millions. But the reality inside those wards was something else entirely. It was a scene from a nightmare. Children as young as 3 years old, writhing in agony on cold, tile floors, their small bodies ravaged by fever and jaundice, their skin turning a sickly yellow. -1 while men in white coats stood by, calmly taking notes. The experiments were finally dragged into the light in 1970 by a young, tenacious journalist named Geraldo Rivera. His televised expose, Willowbrook, the last great disgrace, shocked the nation. The footage was undeniable, the filth, the neglect, the sheer scale of the suffering. Public outrage forced the facility into a long, slow process of closure. But by then, the damage was done. Thousands of children had been subjected to systematic abuse, neglect, and medical torture. The official records were sealed, the details obscured. The officials involved faced minimal consequences, their professional reputations largely intact. But the children, the story goes, they never left. Security guards contracted to patrol the vast, decaying ruins report a consistent, chilling phenomenon. Every night, without fail, they hear it. The sound of children crying. Not just one or two voices, but dozens. Hundreds. A cacophony of sorrow and pain that seems to emanate from the very walls, echoing from empty wards that haven't seen a living soul in decades. They report the frantic patter of small, bare feet running down hallways where the ceiling has long since collapsed. Most chillingly, many report feeling tiny, insistent fingers tugging at their sleeves or the legs of their pants, only to turn and find the corridor utterly empty. One particular story stands out. In 2003, a paranormal investigator, let's call him David, brought state-of-the-art recording equipment into the old medical wing, the heart of Krugman's experiments. The air was still and cold. For hours, he heard nothing but his own heartbeat and the rustle of his clothes. But when he returned to his car and played back the digital audio, he found something that made his blood turn to ice. Beneath the layer of ambient static, a sound emerged. A child's voice, weak, frightened, and impossibly clear, repeating the same desperate plea over and over. It hurts. Make it stop. Please make it stop. David was shaken, but it was what he discovered upon a second, more focused listen that made him abandon the investigation for good. He realized that the voice wasn't just making a general plea. In between the sobs, it was calling his name. A name he had never spoken aloud within that building. To this day, no security company will assign a guard to patrol Willowbrook alone. They know. They know what happens in those halls after the sun goes down. They know that for the lost children of Willowbrook, the experiment never truly ended. They are trapped in an endless loop of suffering, forever waiting for the pain to stop. Number 5. The Dozier School for Boys Massacre of Mariana, Florida. Number 5 takes us south, to the humid, pine-scented air of Mariana, Florida. Here, nestled among the trees, sits a collection of white buildings that project an air of quiet, almost peaceful, order. You'd never guess its secret. For over a century, from 1900 to 2011, the state of Florida sent troubled boys, some as young as 5 or 6, to the Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys. They were promised reform, education, a second chance, a path to becoming upstanding men. What they found, instead, was hell on earth. For over 100 years, a systematic regime of brutality was the norm. Boys were routinely beaten, tortured, starved, and sexually abused. The staff had a name for their punishments. They called it discipline. But when boys died under mysterious circumstances, and they did, with terrifying regularity, there were no inquiries. No death certificates. No calls to grieving parents. Their bodies were simply disposed of, buried in unmarked, anonymous graves in a patch of woods behind the school the boys had grimly nicknamed Boot Hill. When desperate families called, asking for their sons, they were met with a well-rehearsed lie. He ran away, they were told. We're looking for him. But the boys never ran away. They were already in the ground, their stories silenced by the Florida soil. The truth began to claw its way out in 2012. Spurred by the testimonies of aging survivors, a team of forensic anthropologists from the University of South Florida, led by the determined Dr. Aaron Kimmerell, obtained permission to excavate Boot Hill. They expected to find perhaps a dozen graves, a tragic but limited number. What they found was a killing field. They uncovered 55 graves. Later, the count would rise. The bodies were those of children and teenagers. Their bones told a silent, screaming story. Skulls were fractured. Ribs were broken. Bones bore the unmistakable marks of violent, repeated trauma. But here is the secret the state of Florida tried for a century to cover up. The real number of dead was likely much, much higher. Survivors, now old men with tears in their eyes, spoke of a specific white building on the grounds they called the White House. This was not a dormitory. It was a dedicated torture chamber. Boys would be dragged from their beds in the middle of the night and taken to the White House. On a still night, you could hear the screams echoing across the quiet campus. The sharp, sickening crack of a leather strap striking flesh. Sometimes, Bo would be carried out on a stretcher, broken and bleeding. Sometimes, they simply never emerged. One survivor, Robert Straley, testified that he was beaten so severely in the White House that he lost consciousness multiple times. He said that even in his pain-blurred state, he could feel other presences in that room. Cold spots. Whispers in the dark. The ghosts of boys who had entered the White House before him and never left. Boys whose bodies were never recovered from Boot Hill. And here is the terrifying, paranormal confirmation. When a team of paranormal investigators gained access to the White House building in 2014, their equipment immediately went haywire. EMF detectors, which measure electromagnetic energy, maxed out as soon as they crossed the threshold. Temperatures plummeted by 30 degrees in a matter of seconds. And on their EVP recorders, devices used to capture electronic voice phenomena, they captured a chorus from beyond. Dozens of voices. Young voices. Boys pleading, "Please, sir, no more." Boys screaming in raw and ending agony. And one voice, older, deeper, dripping with malice, laughing in the background. At one point, an investigator, his voice trembling, asked into the oppressive darkness, "How many of you are here?" The response came through after a moment of dead silence, crystal clear and chillingly unified on the recording, "All of us." The state of Florida issued an official apology in 2017. They offered to identify the remains through DNA. They promised accountability. But they can't give those boys their stolen lives back. They can't undo a century of state-sanctioned torture. And those boys, the evidence suggests they are still waiting. Still crying out from the forgotten graves of Boot Hill. Still trapped within the blood-stained walls of the White House, forced to relive their final, terrifying moments. Night after night after night. Number 4, the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment in Macon County, Alabama. Number 4 is a story of betrayal so profound, so insidious, that it fundamentally shattered the trust of an entire community in its government. Picture this. It's 1932, in the depths of the Great Depression. You are a poor, black sharecropper in rural Macon County, Alabama. A doctor from the United States Public Health Service arrives. He is polite, well-dressed, an authority figure. He tells you that you have bad blood, a local term for a variety of ailments. He offers you a lifeline, free medical care, free hot meals, and even a burial stipend for your family when you die. You trust him. Why wouldn't you? He's a doctor. He represents the power and knowledge of the United States government. But he is lying to you. It is the first lie in a web of deception that would last for 40 years. From 1932 to 1972, the U.S. Public Health Service, in collaboration with the Tuskegee Institute, conducted what is known as the Tuskegee Study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male. The government deliberately withheld treatment from 399 black men who were infected with syphilis. They were not test subjects for a cure. They were human lab rats, their bodies used to document the full, gruesome progression of the disease. They wanted to watch, in cold, clinical detail, what happened when syphilis was left to run its course. They wanted to document how the men would slowly go blind, go insane, suffer from heart failure, and die. Even after penicillin was proven to be a safe and effective cure for syphilis in 1947, the miracle drug was deliberately withheld. The men were actively prevented from seeking other treatment. They were left to degenerate, to infect their wives, and to pass the devastating disease on to their children, born with congenital syphilis. By the time the experiment was exposed by a courageous whistleblower, a social worker and epidemiologist named Peter Buxton, in 1972, it was too late for so many. 128 men had died directly from syphilis or its complications. 40 of their wives had been infected. 19 children had been born with congenital syphilis. The government's response to the scandal was to destroy vast swathes of incriminating records, pay out settlements with strict gag orders attached, and hope the whole sordid affair would be buried by time. But you can't bury a sin this large. Not really. The energy of such a massive, prolonged betrayal seems to have seeped into the very location where it happened. The old Tuskegee Institute Hospital building, where the men were subjected to their painful and deceptive examinations, still stands. It's been converted into offices for university staff. But the people who work there now, they report things that defy logical explanation. They speak of walking down the hallway on the 3rd floor and hearing the sound of coughing, a wet, rattling cough characteristic of late-stage syphilis echoing from behind the locked doors of empty examination rooms. They feel the unmistakable sensation of being watched from the shadows in the corners of their eyes. Most peculiarly, many report smelling the sharp, sterile odor of antiseptic and old medical equipment, a scent that has no place in a modern office building. One night janitor, a man named James, shared a story he rarely tells. He was cleaning the 3rd floor waiting area around 2 a.m. when he saw a man sitting patiently in one of the chairs. An elderly black man, dressed in a worn, 1940s-style suit. When James approached to tell him the building was closed, the man looked up. His eyes were clouded over, completely blind. When the man asked in a frail, tired voice, "Is the doctor going to make me better?" Startled, James turned for just a second to call for a supervisor on his radio. When he turned back, the chair was empty. The room was silent. But here's what truly haunts that building, the residual echo of the experiment's core evil. Late at night, if you are brave enough to stand alone in the old main examination room on the 3rd floor and listen carefully, some claim you can hear them. Not one voice. Many voices. A low, sorrowful chorus of men, their voices overlapping, asking the same, unanswerable question into the void. Why? Why did you do this to us? Why? The official presidential apology came in 1997. President Bill Clinton stood before the few remaining survivors, all of them old men, and said the words, "I'm sorry." The nation apologized. But sorry doesn't give back 40 years of life. Sorry doesn't cure blindness or restore sanity. Sorry doesn't bring back the dead. And the evidence suggests that those men, or at least the psychic imprint of their suffering, are still in that building. Still waiting for the treatment they were so cruelly promised. Still asking the one question that has no satisfactory answer. Some betrayals are so deep, so personal, that they don't just fade away. They echo forever. We've just uncovered 3 of history's darkest secrets, but the shadows grow deeper still. When we return, we will journey into a forest where an entire town vanished without a trace. Step inside a hospital that became a laboratory for the dead, and confront the terrifying sentient evil that escaped from a place called the Bridgewater Triangle.